Welcome to This Team is Killing Us, a podcast about what the Carolina Panthers do to good people. She is Lauren Brownlow. I am Demetri and And Lauren, what is killing me today actually has only a little bit to do with the Panthers. The college basketball tournaments are all over. The NBA is winding down. I'm not a big NHL guy. I'm certainly not a college baseball guy. Until
betraying your SEC roots.
I know. Listen, I am amongst the few that when people start talking about pitching rotations, I think, why are we doing this? I think until we get to the NFL draft, like these next 3 weekends are among the 3 worst weekends on the sports calendar all year long in terms of just like lack of anything that feels like appointment viewing.
I mean, you're going to upset quite a few people, I'm sure, in our listening audience. The Masters.
Oh, yeah. All right. Well,
besides that, to be fair to you,
on a national level, retracted. Fair. Personally, I still feel like I'm right, and none of you actually like the Masters.
Yeah, no, people. It's like their personality. It's wild. It's like, ooh, I'm not going anywhere from Wednesday to. I'm like, okay. Cool.
I mean, to a certain extent, I always feel that way about the first 2 days of not the NCAA tournament, but the first 2 days of like the big conference tournaments. You know, like who really deep in their soul is going to give up a whole day to sit around and watch Syracuse versus Georgia Tech. I just don't get it. But I feel like it's all very.
Well, I feel attacked.
I say to the person with "Go ACC" on the wall behind her. Yeah. All right, Brownlow. Let's dive into the Panthers because this was like a talking kind of week for Dave Canales. He was obviously we got Joe Person's big one-on-one with him coming out of the owners' meetings. He also was in a couple of other places doing some talks, and we're going to get to that person piece in a moment. But I think the biggest, most interesting thing to me that he talked about this week is the belief that he has in XavierLegette to become that wide receiver one.
Well, if you ever wanted proof that he's a radical optimist, I suppose we got it.
So in this conversation, he acknowledges that the team did try to trade for DK Metcalf and that at the end of the day, the Steelers could offer a contract that the Panthers just could not. And that is sort of what ended those negotiations. And then he said he felt okay because he thought XavierLegette could get there. But he said, quote, "It's up to the coaches to develop him and to watch him continue to grow." And Lauren, this brings up a question. How much do we trust the coaches?
Oh, see, I was actually going to go with Legette.
No. We're going to get to Legette, but I think that we've talked so much about the drop issues that, like, if this is what Dave says, okay, this is all we can do now. Well, how much do we trust the people that are going to be, tasked with that?
I mean, it's hard for me not to look at some of their other results and be impressed.
Right.
To be honest.
That's fair.
That's part of it. So, like, for me, it's one thing if you look at a coaching staff that's had doubts about a certain position and you go, I'm not so sure if they can develop this guy. Certainly, no one on the defensive staff currently deserves any benefit of the doubt in that regard. Yet.
Right.
But at the same time, like, you look at like a Jalen Coker, like, I mean, undrafted free agent, and all of a sudden he's out there balling out. Now that could just be as much Coker as it is, the coaches, but they clearly didn't like work as a detriment to him. So I also wonder how much, I'm trying to think about this, how much has to come from Xavier himself.
Oh, sure.
Versus like at this level, it's one thing in college where there's a lot more micromanaging of what guys are doing on a day-to-day basis,
right,
in terms of like the drills they do, and we're doing X, Y, and Z, and we're going to have you on the jugs machine for X amount of time, yada, yada, yada. But like, I think some of this there was a quote Canales had in the sit down with Joe Person, and it was an interesting one to me about something like, do we want to see Xavier at the jugs machine like Chuba and somebody else? I forget who the other person was. He's like, yeah. And I'm like, an interesting, because Dave doesn't say a whole lot that could be perceived in any way as negative. And
right.
So I feel like it was almost like the slightest of breadcrumbs. And so I'm like, yeah, I'd like to know that he was on the jugs machine.
Right.
Yes, I would. But yeah, I mean, do I trust them? Sure. Based on everybody else at this point. And do I trust him? I want to. And the fact that I don't is less about him and more about a lot of the other Panthers history.
Well, I mean, but let's talk about this. Let's talk about the good and bad of what we saw, because the drops were frustrating. I mean, you and I felt like we were talking about it a lot during the season, but because the drops were so frustrating, I think we overlooked the fact that he was targeted in 20-plus yard patterns, like actual what the NFL defines as deep shots, 9 times. That is top 2 in the NFL. Top 10 for rookies in both catches and yards. I mean, there is obviously a lot of belief the team has in what he can be. That being said, he was also top 5 in the NFL with a drop rate of 6.1, which means every 6 times you throw to him, he's dropping one. And he dropped 2 potential game winners this year, and only one other person in the entire league did that. So
cool.
So look, top 5 in drop rate is not good. However, what I would say is I think that the doubts we have about him are not so much because of the amount of drops, although those were not, it wasn't terrific. It was when the drops happened. Like they seem to be, he has the opposite of whatever the opposite of the clutch gene is.
Yeah, that plus it was not just when they happened, but also how.
Yes.
Let's be honest, their drops can be somewhat subjective.
The one against the Eagles was like there's no sugarcoating that. Like that was a drop. No. That was XL's fault.
I was gonna say, but the thing is, most of Xavier's drops were not ambiguous. They were not
right.
They were not in question, especially the ones in the big moments, like you're talking. Like it wasn't like, oh, Bryce should have had that, in this spot. It was like, oh God, that hit him in the hands and chest.
So there were a couple of times where I don't know if you would call them drops, but certainly Bryce, I thought watching in real time, I thought Bryce sailed it. However, reading some of what Canales said makes me rethink, did Bryce sail those passes, or Bryce Canales not only in this conversation, but also in that person interview, he harps a lot on the size of XL. And so I wonder if it is by design that you can put the ball high in positions where XL can be the only one to go get it. And maybe XL is not disciplined enough to be consistent there. Maybe Bryce is not disciplined enough to put it where it exactly where it's supposed to be when it looks like it's being sailed. I don't know what it is, but after reading this, it made me think less that Bryce is sometimes still very errant, and more, I think that's by design, and it's just not all come together yet.
Yeah, I would agree. And look, I did, I forgot that he was playing through a foot injury last year. Now I know the foot is not a hand. Ha, ha, ha. Don't think I didn't think it. Okay. I thought it. But then I was like, Lauren, be for real. Sure. Obviously, any kind of injury that you have to have surgery for in the off season can be impactful if on your mental state, if nothing else. Right. And, but he's the explosive wide receiver that they wanted. That was the advertisement anyway. That was what the hope was, certainly for him. And so, and like you said, he's got the size that you would think he could. And look, there's a lot sometimes we don't know about what route, where was he supposed to go? When was the ball supposed to get there? All of that. And I would encourage all of us to keep that in mind. Because there are times where I've thought something was one way and you talk to guys after a game and you're like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Did not know that. Great.
Yeah.
So, but you can never assume is all I'm saying. And and it could just be some of that is like them getting their rhythm. Cause remember, Bryce obviously didn't play for a first chunk of the season there because of out for being bad.
Because of reasons.
out parentheses bad or struggling or whatever. But yeah, so I mean, it's one of those things where it's like maybe they didn't quite get the chemistry up that they needed to get, and maybe that will continue to develop too. It's not like Bryce hasn't had experience finding guys downfield at other places in his football career, so I'm not too worried about him. I worry with the dropsies. I worry because it's a little bit like the yips. We've talked about this, and like we've seen with kickers, when they get the yips, sometimes it's hard to un-yip them, and sometimes with wide receivers, it's that way. And sometimes there are just some wide receivers that become these guys that will have catches. Or tight ends, because Eric Ebron stands out the most to me in this way because I covered him at UNC.
Right.
And he would have the dumbest drops. Like, you'd be like, how did you drop that? But then he would make absurd catches that you're like, wait, you dropped that, but you caught that?
Yeah, so
it makes sense.
I feel that way about O.J. Howard because, A, he went to Alabama, and then I was a Buccaneers fan when they drafted him, and it would be like, he would make one great catch in an entire game, disappear for weeks on end, and then suddenly go off for 100-something yard game. Like, there was just no consistency in a way that not only me as a fan, but I'm sure quarterbacks and coaches never really knew how to make sense of working him into a game plan. In terms of targets and where the Panthers think they are right now, it seems pretty clear to me they are still heavily considering a wide receiver in the draft. Dave Canales reiterated that he feels like the team is in a position to draft the best available talent. And look, that's backed up by their top 30 visits. They do have Ted McMillan coming to town. They have Jalen Noel from Iowa State coming to town. And that tells me, Lauren, that it's not a matter of, are we trying to decide, is Ted the best receiver available? That tells me that even if we decide, hey, it's whoever, JalonWalker, Malachi Starks, whatever, with the first pick, it doesn't mean we're not taking a wide receiver right after that, because Jalen Noel is probably a second day guy, and that would line up perfectly with 57. So clearly they're going to add more targets to this team.
Yeah, or maybe they have Tet in because they figure, well, what if somebody's quarterback desperate and they want to trade up with us, and we can, we end up getting a pick where we can still get him. I mean, I don't know. He'd probably be gone by then. But
look, I'm starting to come around to, in terms of who realistically would be available to the Panthers and would, like, I think Tyler Warren is really good. I think he'd be there. It would be really hard to sell a tight end to me at that point.
I would be real mad.
I mean, Tet and JalonWalker are really, and Will Johnson, if he were to fall, those three are really separating themselves. They're like, I want one of those three.
I also, for me, look, this was one mock, and I don't even remember where I saw it, but I saw it over the weekend, and it had Travis Hunter going at 7. And I said, do you know how sick I would feel for the rest of my life if he went to pick above?
Yeah.
Where the Panthers,
agreed.
I would maybe throw up a little. So
agreed.
It's like,
if we are all wrong and you have one of these like quarterback horny drafts where all of a sudden we're putting it on a hat.
Quarterback horny.
That's right. If you have one of these quarterback horny drafts where the top 3 or 4 picks, like, we're all trying to make sense of, like, Jackson Dart at 3, Shadur at 2, Milrow at 4. Like, if that's what's happening and you're the Panthers, like, wouldn't you rocket to the phone to call, whether it's the Patriots at 4 or the Jaguars at 5, and wonder what you have to do to get up there to be in a position to take either Travis Hunter or Abdul Carter? I mean, those are the biggest positions of need, and those are clearly the 2 best players in this draft.
Honestly, especially Travis for me. Travis is, because they need high corner.
Yeah.
Great corner. And obviously I think you could draft him as a corner and still use him in certain sets in your offense.
And he seems to say that's what he wants.
I'm just saying, I don't have any realistic hope of getting him, but let me tell you, if we get him, I might just scream for the first 5 minutes of an ensuing podcast because I would be thrilled, because I think he's legit. To me, That's the one player I would want the most.
Isn't it weird that like just 3 years ago, if I had said to you the most realistic spot for Travis Hunter to me feels like the Patriots, we would go, oh, Jesus, of course. But now if I say to you the most realistic spot feels like the Patriots, I think most people's reaction is they're going to fucking ruin it.
Yeah.
I mean, like, boy, how quickly did that thing come crashing down. All right, let's dive into this conversation that Dave Canales had with Joe Person of The Athletic. Lauren, I think the best way to sum this up is there are year 2 vibes in Charlotte. I mean, look, we did the whole optimist bully thing and how optimism guides his life and blah, 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 blah. But a lot of what I took from this was Dave Canales had a plan for coming in, and we talked a little bit about Pete Carroll talking about this with him last week, and he has seen that plan, that there is proof of concept there, and so there are things that he is expecting from his guys this year, and he's never the type that's going to call these guys out through the media of Bryce better be able to do this, XL better be able to do this. He talks about it from the standpoint of, I am excited because Bryce should be doing this. XL should be doing this. I just walked away from this feeling very much like, oh, this is when you're starting your sophomore year at high school, where you feel like you've got it under control now.
Yeah, I thought it was an interesting conversation for sure. I thought that it was interesting to me because you mentioned the process, and they talked about that a lot too. And it's a cliche, but I get it. And the one thing that, I mean, if you're going to find concerns, the one thing that at times concerned me was I too respect processes. Okay. However, it seems at times like you can be too wedded to a process that you're not as able to adjust. And like, it raised my eyebrow considerably that, and I get why. He's a nice guy. He loves Andy Dalton. He gave some of the context there, right? But it was like, okay, when you see that Bryce is pretty clearly probably a different dude at this point, and that's the dude that your franchise drafted number 1. Like, I get that you respect Andy and that he wants to start somewhere. He would have liked that. Clearly, he's changed his mind on that because he's staying.
Right.
But like, I was like, you don't have to be so wedded to that process that you can't that you have to equivocate on who your starter is going to be or whatever. Maybe it was more out of respect to Andy than what he was actually thinking, but that definitely did worry me a touch because I was like, wait, was he actually considering doing that? Like, was he really going to bring him back? You know what I mean? I'm trying to learn how to parse between what he's saying and what he means,
For sure. So I want to come back to the positivity thing. So we'll put a pin in that because let's go down this road. I wonder what you took away from the Bryce / Andy conversation for Canales's reputation as a quarterback whisperer. To me, I understood it. I understood the reputation better because it is clear this dude is a great ally for guys that need some sort of boost, whether it is a career renaissance like Geno Smith, like a major career renaissance, or whether it is a Bryce Young that has to be shown, no, you belong in this league. We just have to, you just have to have somebody that is coaching you and not coaching, lowercase q quarterback.
And maybe it was just a tough one for him because usually he has one of those guys. And in this case, he
That's a good
has
point.
2. And so he's trying to look out for the best interests of both as best he can and juggle that. And, I doubt he would have put Bryce back in if he'd had a choice when he did.
Yeah, agreed.
Really.
Agreed. And I think that his comments after that, even after it was clear that Bryce was the guy, I think he doesn't want to say no, he wouldn't have, because you never heard him say that he was it was the right time, right? I can't remember who asked him if Andy had never gotten hurt. Have you thought about when you would see Bryce again? And his response was, that's a good question. I think he's a very honest dude about what he has to work with. And
it's just concerning a little bit. Right.
Well, no, it is. I understand that, but I think it is clear that he really did have a plan for Bryce when he replaced him with Andy Dalton.
Yes.
I mean, I believe that more now. And also, like, there was no doubt, there was no part of me in reading the conversation with Joe Person that thought that there was any bullshit to the idea that he really was heartbroken for Andy Dalton,
Yeah.
that the run ended this way, even though I think by that point you and I were saying, like, hey, this is no better than Bryce at his worst by game, 4 or 5 of that. It clearly been off the rails.
And so, yeah, and that I think was like, again, so my only slight area of concern with him is like, I actually respect that a coach has that process and
Sure.
like wants to go about it a certain way and is like, this is the way I think is the best way to do it, and wants to stick to it no matter what crops up in the way, no matter what like PR stuff you feel like you have to do or blah, blah, blah. He's like, no, this is the way we're going to do it. I respect that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm glad that he's being given the freedom to do that as well. However, it was like, wait, so you were just gonna stick with him?
Yeah.
Oh, like, why? And not to be like a jerk, but it's like, I mean, and I get it. Like, you want to give him the chance. Like, he was playing well when he first came back in, but it was pretty clear he didn't have it anymore. Well, and that's often how backups go. Like, that's just what it is.
So it makes me think about something else I wrote down here in the rundown, and I thought about this reading the stuff about the quarterbacks is, he does come across, Dave Canales does come across like a dude that can recognize growth, even if it's not showing up, on stat sheet.
Right.
And he thinks about what that means, right? And we'll go back to what he said about, or what I was talking about with, the way he talks about year 2, that, here is what, I'm excited Bryce should be capable of this. I'm excited XL should be capable of this. Like, he said the phrase, everybody is changing, a couple of times in that interview. And it makes me wonder if, when you and I are talking about, okay, like, if Andy is no better than Bryce in week, whatever it was, 6 or 7, like, how is this helping the team at all? I do wonder if he saw something about, or if, in the locker room, he could tell the team was buying into Andy, or Andy was more comfortable with the, with the,
or they weren't ready to buy into Bryce,
Yeah. I mean, it makes me wonder what it is he recognized there, because I do have to believe that the guy has the ability, that it seems like he's shown to recognize that something is moving along, and this is worth continuing to do, changing, whatever the case may be.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'd rather a coach, like I said, I'd still rather a coach like have a thought process in mind and want to stick to it versus just like, well, we'll see what the winds of change, where those blow us, and just put in whoever is hot. You can't manage quarterbacks that way. And I think it'll be really interesting, actually. Like, to me, it adds an interesting wrinkle to next year to see the care he obviously has, certainly for Andy, and I think for Bryce too. But I always said that this season. I know you, like, not you as much, but others were like, oh, he doesn't believe in Bryce. He doesn't like Bryce. And I always said, I don't think that's what this is. Like, I really didn't. And I think you can see that in what he had to say. He was just being deliberate, and he wasn't trying to build him up, I don't think, too much before Bryce could show on his own. Like, he was like, I'm not going to tell you what Bryce can do. Like, let me let Bryce, that's probably what he was thinking to himself, I think. Is like, let me let him show you or not. You know, and I'm not going to hype him up and put him in too big of a position where if he fails, then he looks even more foolish than he already had looked,
Right. I mean, obviously, I have an emotional block that made it very hard to be. I can't put this on over my headphones. That was ridiculous. I obviously have an emotional block that was very quick to act and think with Bryce. But yeah, I mean, go back and check the tape. Lauren has been remarkably consistent with not thinking that that Canales was out on Bryce as early as the rest of us were.
I think it'll be interesting with the roles more clearly established. Next year, like, to see how that goes with a guy in both of their corners, frankly, as much as Dave is. And I think that can only really benefit them. And it's certainly a nice contrast to things we've seen in Charlotte in the past.
For sure. Before we move off of this, this is not a shot at Joe Person, anybody covering the team, anybody that has covered Dave Canales before. I get the optimism is his defining characteristic. Like, you can see that optimism shapes the way he prepares for games and the way he structures his week. But the optimist story has gotten a little bit boring at this point.
I mean, I think I get it. However, honestly, as like time goes by and we sink further into an abyss, like, with Wave's arms and everything else, like it almost becomes more radical.
So
to me, where it's like, wow, because he strikes me as a guy that would be wearing a shirt that says like "Too blessed to be stressed," which I can't imagine wearing right now or anytime in the near future.
So I totally 1000% agree with you. And Lauren, it is the unspoken reason I want these stories to stop is I don't want to find out why he's so optimistic. Like I'm good with him being a very happy mystery until I don't want to dive any deeper into this.
I'm gonna just go with he doesn't read the news ever.
Right. I want to real quick just tell you on April 15th, some of you that listen know we were supposed to have this big show with the Sklar brothers. That has been postponed to September 19th. You can still get tickets at the Rialto's website, but our friend Sarah Sivian already had non-refundable travel, so we are going to do a party totally free for you to come. Ovius and Julio and Sarah Sivian are going to be hosting a hockey happy hour in Carolina. Crank Arm Brewing, 5 o'clock on Tuesday, April 15th. Come on out at 5 is when we all start getting together. 5:30 the show begins. You got prizes to win, obviously beer to drink, and plenty of people to chill out with from 5 to 7. April 15th, totally free to attend at Crank Arm Brewing in Raleigh. Lauren, I love my my mock drafts and my draft stock and all of that stuff. I think as popular as a mock draft pick for the Panthers as ShemarStewart was, and you and I talked about potential versus production, and the production was not very good for Stewart as an edge rusher at Texas A&M, but he had this great combine performance. I read something from Go Long that made me think, or excuse me, the long read, sorry, that made me think it is time to completely remove ShemarStewart from the board. They did this series of conversations with scouts asking about all of the top 10 edge rushers in this class, and I want to read to you what they said about ShemarStewart. This is disheartening to say the least. Quote, he's the classic example of a guy who has no idea how to play football, doesn't know how to take on blocks, doesn't know how to find the ball, doesn't know how to work off of things. I was shocked he was 281 at the Senior Bowl. He plays like he's 240. He crushed it at the combine, but in the games, he is just a non-factor. That made me revisit his stats, Lauren. He really is a non-factor in games. And so
I just get such Al Davis vibes from this, like the hyping of him.
Yeah. Okay, so it's a good way to say it, as this leads into my next question. Do you feel like you have any kind of good read this time of year on what is real and what is a smokescreen when you hear these things from anonymous scouts? Bob McGinn from the long read is the one that put this together. The conversations I thought were very good, very enlightening, but I don't know what to make of anything being said by anybody right now because it's a chess game for everyone.
Yeah, although I always have to remind myself that, like, I'm not saying these guys are obviously smart in some ways, but I don't know that, like, Game of Thronesy and subterfuge is like their political, maneuvering is necessarily their area of strength. So, like, for me, I'm also kind of like, okay, I think a lot of times we assume things are like 4D chess, and maybe some of them aren't because those guys actually aren't as smart in that way.
The 20 was it the 2021 draft? Was that the Trevor Lawrence draft? You remember that San Francisco traded up to 3, and there was all of these reports. Like, we all assumed that it was going to be, whoever the Jets didn't take between Zach Wilson or is now the Jets quarterback.
Whoever the quarterback people were horny for.
Justin Fields.
We
We all thought it was going to be one of those two, and we kept hearing, no, actually, Kyle Shanahan loves Mac Jones. And even as an Alabama fan, I was thinking, like, that makes no fucking sense in the world. That is obviously a smoke.
It makes sense now to me that he would feel.
And then in hindsight, like, no, he really did want Mac Jones. Apparently, there was this crazy fight between him and John Lynch over Mac Jones. So that's why, like, I don't think there's a smokescreen to this. I think ShemarStewart, I think the numbers back up that ShemarStewart might be really great with the measurables, but he's not really great in games. But I can't dismiss it. Like that is part of how GMs talk right now, because it's not just about we want the guy to be there. This was a scout,
right?
Yeah. It's not
so
just
that's
about, It's not just about how we want guys to be there, though. It is also about hoping you can get other people to react in a way that maybe ups what their package value is to you.
Yeah, for sure. I agree, but it's
I want to compare real quick what was being said about ShemarStewart to what is being said about JalonWalker, sort of that hybrid linebacker out of Georgia that everybody loves to pencil into the Panthers. Two different scouts here. Here's the first one. Quote, when you add up the whole player, I would rather have this guy. The scout was comparing him to Abdul Carter, largely seen as the best player in this draft. And the other one, another scout calling him a defensive coordinator's dream, saying the people that don't like him are the only ones labeling him a tweener. Everybody else is calling him a hybrid. It's weird to take a linebacker top 10 now, but I mean, it's just so much of a no-brainer that I get why everybody is penciling this guy into the Panthers, and I think maybe we should stop overthinking it.
I was going to say, I mean, like, if pass rush is the skill, I don't care what your position says. Like, really, at this point, this team needs you do pass rush, great.
Right.
Your safety, don't care. Like,
he's
whatever.
coming from the same college defensive system that Nolan Smith did, who obviously had a great season for the Eagles, but he's bigger than Nolan Smith. So maybe he is a little bit more NFL prepared, I guess, to be a hybrid than Smith was.
I mean, I will say of the people they could pick there, he probably makes my tummy hurt the least. So
yeah.
Like he makes me feel the most like, okay, like I need a low floor guy to make my tummy not hurt. Okay. That's what I need. That's what Lauren Brownlow GM needs. Okay. Otherwise I
want to make sure I understand. Do you mean a high floor guy?
High floor guy. Sorry.
Yeah, okay.
Yes. Thank you. High floor guy. I'm sorry. What did I say? Low ceiling?
You said low floor.
Ceiling is the floor and the
That's
roof,
right.
Whatever. Low floor. No, high floor. High floor.
Right.
Sorry. To be
Michael
clear.
Jordan
high
can't
floor.
sue us now if we get it totally wrong.
I need a high floor. Like, yes. And he has a very high floor to me, which I'm totally good with. Like a Georgia hybrid linebacker who can rush the passer and produce in college. Well, what's the issue? Did he do crimes? No? Cool. We're good.
That's the other part. Like, son of a coach has been around the game his whole life, and people talk about, walking encyclopedia of defensive schemes. Awesome. You said, has he committed crimes? The other thing that people keep saying is this is like the utmost of utmost character dudes, right? And I don't think that is...
No speeding for that guy.
He's one of the few. I don't think that is the most important thing in the world. I think it's pretty important.
Yeah, me neither. It depends on what it is, obviously, and everything else. But
I think it's important for a rookie coming into a locker room that doesn't have a clear identity yet, though.
Yeah.
I think that... not having somebody that feels like he can get away with anything when you don't have that guy to get him in line is probably a big deal. Speaking of rookies, Lauren Brownlow, are you going out right now to buy the Colin Granger jersey?
No, I'm not buying much anything right now, though, to be fair.
The Panthers have signed Colin Granger as a tight end. He is 6'8". He is 245 pounds, and he has never played a down of football before.
Jimmy Graham. Did you know
Lauren, well, that is what Colin Granger has been doing. Played 5 years of college basketball this past season. He was at Coastal Carolina coming off the bench. He put up 7 points and 4 rebounds in a game at NC State this year. So maybe you saw him there. You you hit it, Lauren, like the Jimmy Graham thing. We have been doing the forward to tight end thing for a long time, to the point that, do you remember George Fant?
Yeah, sure.
Played college basketball at Western Carolina or Western Kentucky, then had a nice 10-year career in the NFL. Now he has a business identifying these guys. And the story with Colin Granger is the first of his clients to actually get signed by the team. Granger not only had never played football before, this was not something he was thinking about until George Fant watched his tape and sent him a DM on Twitter and said, I think you could be ideal to try this. He was in for a tryout or for an open tryout with 5 different teams. The Panthers end up calling him in, and he signs while multiple edge rushers are visiting the Panthers on their top 30 visits. So we have all of these elite rookies in town, and the one, and granted, those other guys cannot walk away with a contract yet. The one that has never taken a snap before is the one that Dave Tepper is like, give him money right now.
Hey, why not? I mean, like, as long as it's not very much, why not take a flyer? Like,
and that's exactly what this is. Like, it's hard to imagine the guy makes the team. I would not have guessed this until I read it. Did you know the Panthers have 5 tight ends signed right now?
Oh, I mean, I know a couple, but I didn't know that many.
So 5 are signed. I would imagine that Trimble and Jatavian Sanders are the only 2 with clear spots on this team. Jordan Matthews probably will end up with a spot on this team. But after that, it's a whole lot of, the who's who of who, right? Like there's just, it's hard for me to picture him making the team A because Trimble and Sanders kind of play the position the same way. I would think and Jordan Matthews.
You think so?
I do. In terms of, well, tell me why you think I'm crazy.
I think Sanders is way more of an offensive weapon than Trimble. Trimble can be counted upon to catch it,
right?
But I just think he's way more of a weapon in terms of like can stretch the field, et cetera, et cetera. Whereas Trimble can catch it for you, but that's not necessarily what you're looking to like. He can catch a few passes, but like I think Sanders is more dynamic in that way.
So I think what I mean is I think both of them are more like their primary use is as an offensive weapon. I think you're right. Sanders is way more talented. Is way more.
Trimble's the better blocker of the 2, for sure.
Exactly. But I don't think Trimble is a block first tight end. Jordan Matthews certainly isn't a block first tight end. And I think if you're adding somebody, it's probably what you're adding at tight end. Sometimes I think about like all the talk around Tim Tebow switching to tight end. I can't remember what tight end it was that said, like, all of you talk about this like it's easy. I know the position has changed, but this is a highly specialized position.
Yeah.
So good luck to Colin Granger. I just don't think his Panthers career is lasting very long.
Hey, you know what? I'm here for it. If the Saints fans have to listen on the broadcast to 800 mentions of a year of, do you know this guy played basketball, and seeing a picture of him in his basketball uniform and everything, then there will be some semblance of justice in the universe, and I'll be thrilled about it.